So here's something interesting. This is a bottle of wine from the Western Cape. It's a Cape Sweet Red and it's a South African blend of wine. Now, it's still proudly South African. Well, at least this one is. But for how long? See, the thing is that the French are buying up South African wine farms and they're expanding their grip on the global wine industry. For instance, in 2022, 368 million litres of wine left South African shores via export. The largest export markets for South African wine and African wine is actually the United Kingdom at $2 billion, Germany at $1.2 billion, and the Netherlands at $889 million. Now, when it comes to local price, more than 3/4 of all wines sold in South Africa are actually sold below 50 Rand per litre. That's incredible. Only 8.7% of wines sold are actually sold over 100 Rand a bottle. Now, the global markets love South African wines, and for this reason, international investors from China and France are pumping money into South Africa and are actually starting to take over. Well, kinda, not really. Remember that the euro goes a little bit further than the rand in our shores. Currently, 2,700 farmers cultivate 92,000 hectares of grapes under vines in South Africa. And this is over an area that covers 800 kilometers in length. Around 20% of South Africa's wineries are now foreign owned. And in the last 5 years, we've seen a flurry of foreign investor activity into South Africa. Just in early 2023, 8Cake, Valeria, and Kleinzalzer wine farms were all acquired by international investors in just a few months. Kleinzalzer, for instance, had a turnover amounting to 210 million Rand in 2021, but crazy as this might sound, it was still really struggling. It said that around 39% of South Africa's wine businesses actually operate at a loss. But in order for us to understand the wine industry's takeover, we've got to understand where the South African wine industry as a whole historically comes from. The history of South African winemaking actually begins with the arrival of the Dutch East India Company, the VOC. This is back in the mid-17th century. In 1652, there's that year again, Jan van Riebeeck, a Dutch merchant, established a supply station at the Cape of Good Hope. The primary purpose for the station was to provide fresh produce to passing ships traveling between Europe and the East Indies. Recognizing that there was potential in the region's climate and its soil, Jan van Riebeeck actually planted the first vineyard in 1655, and by 1659, the first South African wine was produced. Now, Van Riebeeck's initial efforts were modest, but his successor, Simon van der Stel, significantly expanded viticulture in the region. Van der Stel, the governor of the Cape Colony, established the Groot Constantia estate in 1685. Groot Constantia quickly became renowned for producing high-quality wines, particularly dessert wines, which gained international acclaim. Now, these early successes laid the foundation for South Africa's wine industry. Then the French connection began with the Huguenots' influence. Around the late 17th century, the Cape saw a significant influx of French Huguenots fleeing religious persecution in France. Many of these refugees were skilled winemakers, and they brought with them valuable knowledge and expertise. Many actually settled in the Franschhoek Valley, which means literally French corner. The Huguenots played a crucial role in advancing viticulture in South Africa, and maybe that's why they're back. I don't know. The Huguenots introduced a new grape and new varieties, and also they brought new winemaking techniques which greatly improved the quality and the diversity of South African wines at the time, and they still persist. Their influence is still evident today in the names of the wine estates and the regions, such as La Morte, La Mins, and La Bourgogne. The integration of French wine viticultural practices with the existence of the Dutch methods created a unique and robust winemaking culture in the Cape, which still stands till this day. Now that we've got a little bit of history, we can explore a little bit more about why this new wave of investments in our wine farms is taking place. The opportunities here in South Africa are actually very good. Now, although Stellenbosch is one of the most expensive South African wine regions, I mean, it averages a cost of 50,000 euro or around 900,000 to a million rand for a hectare of cultivatable land. that amount is still very much cheaper than buying land in, let's say, Europe or Napa Valley and the Sonoma Valley in California. On top of that, we produce some really good wine over here. Now, foreign investors come from all over the world, and their interest in South Africa is not really anything new. However, it's the arrival of giants like Le Grand Chai de France that has been driving the sector of late. This family group from Alsace in Europe is a leading wine producer and merchant, and they acquired Nettlingshof in 2022, which produces both reds and white wines. In 2023, it also acquired Villeria, an estate known for its Method Cap Classique, the South African equivalent of sparkling wine, the Cape method of making sparkling wine. Now, according to LGCF, demand for South African wines is growing, particularly amongst younger consumers in Europe, who are less concerned about things like where the product actually comes from. They want good wines, and South Africa makes good wines. A lot of people like the profile and the taste of South African wines, especially the reds, and many people are surprised globally, and I don't know why. They're really surprised by the quality of our wines as well as our sparkling wines, right? What must start to become apparent to us is that the way that South Africans see the country and its opportunities, and the way that other people or other investors, global investors, see the country is different. There's a disconnect. There is a hell of a lot of potential in many industries, like winemaking and in others. Industries that are geared towards selling our goods and wares to a global audience. When they buy our goods, they see that our stuff is just as good as anyone else's globally. So the next time that you take a sip of your favorite wine, you could be helping to sustain a South African industry that is becoming more French, but one that is bringing foreign currency into South Africa and also sustaining South African jobs. You know, everywhere I look, I realize that more and more each day that we are a country with more than just poverty, inequality, and unemployment. We have potential, but we honestly need to start using that said potential. Thank you for watching this video up until this point. I hope that you are having a great festive season and you're enjoying South African wines. Check out one of these other videos and hopefully they'll be just as interesting as this one. Cheers.